and welcome back to CAFC, the Charlton all-time Fantasy 11 Club with me, your host, Sam Wyatt. It is an absolute delight to bring you this week's episode. A big fish we've got today, guys. Very excited. Yes, the attire is atrocious. I do apologise. You caught me on the hoof. I wanted to make sure I got this one out because it is a big guest. Someone I wanted to get on straight away when I started hosting the channel. It is the one and only Mr. Louis Mendez. That man is an absolute Trojan. He literally, he must have 28 hours in a day. I don't know how he does it, but he hosts Charlton Live. He reports for BBC London. He does South London Press. He's there in the heart of the club. So for me as a fan, I'm sure as you guys as well, getting his insight into what the club's all about, but more importantly, who his favourite ever Charlton 11 are, was a massive plus. It was very exciting for me because I think we're around a similar age. So I was interested to know whether, those players that we were watching when we were growing up, sort of youngsters and teenagers, are they the players that you stick with, or do you pick some of the newer crop of players? I mean, I can't. The question at the end, who gets in your all-time 11, if you had to put one in the current squad, is a hard question when you've watched the likes of, some of the players that Louis picked today. It was fantastic. It was great to talk to him. I had a little cheeky quiz for him because 6 of his team played in a Spurs game, the 01-02 season. So I tried to get him to get the rest of the team. So keep an eye out for that. I post the full lineup so you can have a look. But it's really interesting to know, those players that we fell in love with when we were growing up, they stay with you, and it's really hard to replace them, especially when we've got the kind of squad we've got at the moment. So we recorded this in November. It's the 19th of January. This video is coming out, so we're well into the transfer. We're going to cut this bit out and keep smiling because it's a transfer window. We brought in Connor Coventry. We brought in a couple of loan players. Blackington looked great at the weekend, but that's not what this is about. No. This is about the all-time best 11. And today, very excited to welcome the fantastic Mr. Louis Mendez. Hello and welcome back to the CAFC Charlton all-time Fantasy 11 Club. I'm your host, Sam Wyatt, and this is the cozy place. This is the place where it's fine to be a Charlton supporter, isn't it? Just get locked up inside, all nice cup of nostalgia. Or we'll talk about the playoff final. We'll talk about when players were getting picked for England, all the lovely times. We're not dealing with any of the shit that's going on at the moment because it's hard being a Charlton fan in the real world at the moment. But my guest today is not only at the coalface, he pretty much runs the whole mine. And one of my questions is going to be, how do you bloody do it? But I'm going to bring him in now. It is the fantastic Mr. and one of the best named people in Charlton as well, Mr. Louis Mendez. How are you doing, sir?
Hi, Sam. Yeah, I'm good. Thanks. Thanks for having me on. How are you?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. I'm fine. This is a lovely place to be. This is great. This is easy. How the hell are you doing? How my first question is, how do you do it? Twice a week. I can't get my head around it.
Yeah, it can be tough sometimes, especially when we're going through the lull of being in mid-table League One, which we seem to be all the time at the moment.
Yeah, so just the last 3 years have been a bit tricky. That's all.
Yeah, but we've not lucky is the phrase I'd use, but I've certainly had access to a lot of stuff to talk about over the last few years, and even though we're going through a bit of lull at the moment, it's still talking about Charlton every week, and that's what I enjoy doing. So, woe is me and all that, but I do love doing it.
It must be like I listen. I firstly, massive thank you for doing it because I love the show. It's absolutely brilliant. And what I find is that almost it doesn't matter if we've had an amazing week or an awful week. That Charlton Live is the place you can come, and it's sort of a cathartic release of like, thank God, all that's out of my system. I can move on with my weekend now. Is that just the way you have to treat it?
Yeah, definitely. Especially after like a tough week or when we're going through something weird like the rolling years or the Southall catastrophe. Sometimes it is good to get it off your chest, or even if it is just like a frustrating, disappointing performance. It's nice to come and talk about it and share our feelings about it and speak with like-minded Charlton fans and try and cheer ourselves up after a game like that. Obviously, then when we come on after a good win, then it's a great place to be as well because we can relive it.
Well, that's it. You get to talk about the good stuff, and then when it's the bad stuff, I guess it's just kind of really getting into why it's bad and what's gone wrong, and I guess what you would do. One of the things I've got though is where does Charlton Live kind of come from? Because I got into it sort of Bowyer Bowyer's first season, I think, when that sort of around the playoffs. But it sounds like it's been around forever. Like, has it always been in the same kind of guise? Has it gone up and down? What sort? When did you get involved with it as well?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been on it for 10 years now, but it's been going a lot longer than I have. I've always said, and I sort of ran this past Clive Richardson, who used to do something called Charlton Chat in like the 80s and 90s, and I've always said I feel like Charlton Life sort of in a way came from that. But yeah, it was about maybe 15, 20 years ago. Then it went away. Then it came back. The likes of Peter Finch and Dave Lockwood and Terry Smith, who are obviously still involved now. A guy called Gadge as well was sort of we're running it sort of partly on the club website. The club helped just to give them and the community trust massively as well. Gave them some space at the ground and the club website to broadcast upon. But obviously there was never too many people trying to sort of tie you down with that. But obviously since we've moved away from that, it means we're a lot more freer as well. And yeah, so I joined about 10 years ago. I remember I joined just after we won promotion under Chris Powell. So the championship season under Powley was my first time sort of in and around it. And then yeah, as the years have gone on, we moved from the club website onto a local radio station called Maritime Radio. And then sort of around the time of COVID, we started operating obviously out of my house and everyone coming in remote, and that's when we took it onto our own platforms and our own podcast only. And then maybe about 8 or 9 months now we've been on YouTube using StreamYard like you do, like to broadcast live again, which is my favorite way of doing it, because when you're live obviously there's a lot more interaction with people who can throw questions at you and who can answer stuff that you say. And that's when the show I feel is at its best, when we've got loads of people getting involved and having their say on something that has gone wrong, or hopefully just enjoying a good win from the day before. Because like I say, when it's a happy show like that, it can fly by. But to be fair, when it's been a bad result or something's gone horribly wrong as well, you get so many comments that can fly by as well, to be fair.
Yeah, I can imagine. I imagine a few of them you have to bleep out and sort of shift around and maybe not publicise. So obviously you've been involved for 10 years. So obviously, and from what I understand, you've had different levels of involvement with the club and doing different things around the club. How hard is it to be that close to the managers? I mean, obviously you're talking to the managers, the players once, twice a week. How hard is it to kind of keep things to yourself that you might not be able to publicise on the pod and sort of find that level of what works and what doesn't? Is that kind of just something you've learned to deal with, or is it still really difficult?
Yeah, in a way. I mean, I'm not. For a while I was doing commentary for the club, but again, you're going back 10 years under the Roland era, and actually Katrine asked me to step aside because at the same time I was also writing for the local paper and doing Radio London as well, which obviously I still do. So there was a bit of a conflict of interest there, but I was never going to be one who would, if I had something to say, if I felt something was the truth, then I had to say it. And that's why obviously that didn't always chime with the way the club wanted to present itself. So I was never really that surprised when I was asked to stop doing the club commentary, particularly during the Carol Fry era when things weren't going great. And, it had to be said in the local press that things weren't going great. So since then, if I hear something that I can pass off as news, then I will do. It's extremely rare that anything comes across my desk that I feel like I have to not say. Obviously, you have to be fair. That's the most important thing. Is I have to be fair to everyone involved. I'm sure there's been a couple of times over the years when on the podcast my fan hat probably has come out more so than it should have done. But that's because at heart, obviously, it's a fan podcast, and the club traditionally haven't tended to have too much to say about it, which is good. There's been one or two little moments, but overall I have a good relationship with the club. But at the same time, if I have to criticise, then I do, and if that's on Charlton Live or on Radio London or in the paper, then that's how we do it. And the club, if they ever had anything to say, then I'm sure they'd let me know, but it'd have to be a pretty big and legitimate argument that they'd want to have for me to stand down on something. So yeah, I've never really had any concerns about that, and I haven't really had any major issues. If I hear something and I can't say it on the pod, that's very, very rare. And to be honest, off the top of my head, I can't think of any recent examples where that happens at all. The only major one I ever remember happening was when Jake Forster-Caskey got injured before the start of the season. just before we were due to play Sunderland. So I knew that on the Thursday before the show, but it was just sort of like as a sort of a bit of respect for the manager. He didn't want these team news leaked, and that's how I heard it. He doesn't want the team news out. So I was like, yeah, well, I'm not going to mess him around with that. That's the only advantage that anyone would have got from that would have been for Sunderland, knowing that one of our players wasn't playing. So there was no benefit to me. But so you might get the odd thing like that, but yeah, extremely rare.
I mean, there's been some amazing stuff that you've covered. Like I remember when obviously Southall was getting kicked out of or trying to kick people out, or was getting kicked out of pretty much where your studio at the ground, and those kind of things. Has it ever happened where the club has actually said, has there ever been anything like that, or like you said, has it just been pretty easy going? Because when you look at the things that have happened, you've had Sangha playing the guitar, getting rid of Valley Floyd Road. Like there's been some controversial stuff, and you've dealt with it on the pod. But I just wondered if there's ever been, and you probably can't tell me, otherwise you would have said it on your own pod. But I just wondered if there's ever been any of that. Do you mind taking that episode down, or do you mind cutting that bit out?
No, none of that. Yeah, none of that whatsoever. Yeah, even like the South. So even when Southall was getting kicked out, that was classic. But yeah, we were there to do a show, but obviously it coincided with. I mean that show we were due to do was to preview our game. I think it was at Hull that weekend, which then got cancelled due to COVID. So that was the last time we ever would have been in the studio anyway. So that day, just because what had happened and the fact that I confronted Southall outside, I thought, right, if it's ever going to kick off with us here, today's the day. So that night we went into the studio after Southall had been dealt with and took all the equipment home, which obviously turned out to be the right decision because of COVID anyway. But that was the first time I ever became concerned that we might not be allowed in the studio. Even under Roland and Katrine, there was never the threat of that I can remember. There was one time when there was a Pilates class going on next door. So it's hard to explain, but basically our little studio is right next to what I call the press room. It's where we do our press conferences after, but the community trust, who obviously do loads of stuff for different various groups, use that space as well. And there was some sort of Pilates class that Katrine was sort of watching going on, and the whole time I was sitting there going, I wonder if this is when she finds out that we actually broadcast from the Valley, because I never put it past her that she didn't even know that we were there. But then we were literally sat in the room next to her watching her watch a Pilates class. So I did wonder if we might find ourselves in trouble there. But yeah, honestly, there's never been anything that I can remember. There was one little incident relatively recently, not this season, where a player wasn't happy with something we'd said and put in a clip.
Oh, really?
And to be fair, like it was more of a misunderstanding of what I was saying as a joke, not understanding the context of it. So I spoke to the player after, and we smoothed it over, and it was fine. That's the closest we've come. But to be fair, like the player was fine with it. I spoke to the manager at the time, and he was fine with it. Like, and that's why I was saying I got to be fair. I don't want to take the mick or upset anyone on that front. But that was, no player is going to come to us if we've said we think they've played badly, because that's our opinion. It's obviously just there's the way of saying things, which in hindsight, obviously we would have done differently that time. But live and learn from those things, and I just had to sort of be the bigger man and go make sure I smoothed over and explained and got it all sorted. So yeah, that's extremely rare. And like I say, we've spent 5 or 6 years saying the players aren't good enough for and that sort of stuff. You don't get any comeback from that, because it's an opinion, and footballers understand that this is what happens. Whatever level of football you're at, you get players discussing your opinion, and also being fans. When we really want someone to do well and they have a good game, we'll butter them up as much as we need to. So it works both ways.
Absolutely, and I guess that's where it must be hard, because obviously, like you said, you've got different hats on. You got your fan hat, you got the commentary hat, you got running the pod, and my dream would be able to see the WhatsApp chat that you guys always talk about, because there must be some amazing things flying around in there. Is there any ambition with the pod? Is it just to keep it going? Is there ambitions of, obviously you've had guests on and that sort of thing? I love listening to it, but it's really interesting. You've got different characters on there. You've got Nathan who seems to be more involved with the tactical side of it, and then other guys giving their opinions. How did you all, sorry, I'm asking you 3 different questions, but how do you get the guys together? How does it work? Is it just mates of yours that you've just bonded with, and they've all got their own opinion, or are you specifically looking for pundits to do different things on that?
Yes, I mean it is sort of thrown together, but there's not really like it didn't really all start off of mates. So I mean, for starters, Terry and Sue have been on it longer than I have. So they've been about a bit longer than I have. People like Nath I did know. I've known for a number of years, but we weren't like close mates. Like we were sort of in a big drinking group that went to the Rose of Denmark, you know, for games and do away games. And I was always matey with him. But yeah, one day he just expressed a desire to come on, and like I say, you know, he knows his stuff really well, as well as being like a character. But you know, we're sort of blessed with all the different types of characters we have. So someone like Tom, just a few years ago, just asked to come on, you know, and at the time I was a bit short people, met him at the Woolwich Town Hall meeting, if you remember. That was brought together just to discuss Roland's ownership at one point. We had a drink there. I was like, yeah, jump on, and you know, we've become good mates since then. Yeah, same as Lewis. I think I've just offered to come on. Yeah, and I think Ben. So Ben is one of my closest mates. Benji, he literally lives down the road, and I've known him for 10, 11 years now, going games together. And yeah, so he did get on for being my mate. But again, it is good to have an opinion of someone who goes to a lot of games and who knows that sort of stuff. Yeah, and you know, Joe, similar, just sort of offered. And when I found out he owned a pub, I was like, okay, I'm interested.
Yeah,
and,
goes a long way.
Yeah. So yeah, but obviously, you know, we just gave him a trial and he was great. Tash is obviously our newest member at this moment. Yeah, she's come on a couple of times to discuss her Game 2 stuff when she was involved in that. And also, you know, I thought it spoke really well. And so yeah, she's part of the team when she can. Obviously, Mark was sort of a friend of the show when Peter Finch was hosting, and he used to bring in food. So like we used to do special events at the ground, like on the last show of the season and stuff, and he used to effectively cater for it. But again, you get chatting to people, and you know they've got interesting opinions. So yeah, it is sort of thrown together. Not really, you know, these people didn't necessarily start off with my mates, but you're quite lucky that we found quite a good blend of different people who can do different things, and yeah, it works really nicely. I should also say we've got Paul Glover who runs sort of everything in the background. So again, he's been involved with Charlton Live a lot longer than I have. But yeah, he's sort of in the background, but he does all the computer stuff and all that. Right. And without him, the show wouldn't go very far either, because I'm not as up to on the technical stuff like he can run the website, which I can't do.
Well, I'm sitting here without any headphones or a mic, so you're doing better than me. The only thing I've got is the retro shirts, but that's about it. It's great, and it's always a good chat. You know, whoever's on, they're going to give a good opinion, different opinion, and I think what I value is like someone's picking up on something I haven't seen, or if I'm sitting there going, why is May playing in a false nine or whatever, and you've got someone to actually come on and go, well, I think he's doing it because of this. It's like, oh, it's just nice having. I think that's the thing about Charlton Live. It's the thing about Charlton TV. It feels like we're back in the Prem again, where you'd have it on Match of the Day and actually people talking about the game. And I think that's the hardest thing. Is I've got mates that are Palace fans, I've got mates that are United fans. All they need to do is flick on Instagram, flick on the Sky Sports, and someone's talking about their club. Whereas with Charlton, it's like you need to, unless you want to go on the forums, which can be a bloody minefield. Charlton Live is one of the places you can go to actually catch up on the news and get different opinions and that kind of thing. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, yeah, and that's why for me as well, like the fact that we get fans sending in messages or emails or, you know, comments and whatnot is so big for me as well, because you'd be surprised the amount of times like we've missed something or hadn't thought of why something might have happened as well, and people can chime in, and it really does help to sort of drive the debate a bit further. And, you know, obviously I disagree with some of the stuff that people send in sometimes. I had one the other day that almost wound me up, where someone said maybe people's expectations are too high. We just have to accept we're mid-table League One now. And I was like, no. Like, that's not how I feel at all. Like, we can't be accepting that.
I can hear in your voice as well, because I've been listening for so long. I can hear when something pisses you off, and I know you're keeping your level. But that was definitely one where I was throwing stuff across the kitchen. Like, what the fuck? We're not a mid League One club. This is ridiculous. But yeah, I completely appreciate it. So before we get into your team, where does the link with Charlton come from? Is it did you inherit it? Is it something that you picked up? Where's the kind of love for Charlton?
Yeah, just from my dad, really. So my dad's born in Plumstead, lived in Woolwich. His dad was Charlton. Obviously, he's Charlton. So yeah, my first game was '94. So they opened. It was the day they opened the East Stand. Then now the Alan Kirbishley Stand. It was a game against Southend. And yeah, so I've always loved football, but obviously like Charlton, I was always fascinated with. And yeah, I think we got my first season ticket when I was about 12, 13, I think. So we were Prem at the time. I think we got into the Prem, and then we had to wait for the ground to be expanded before more season tickets became available. And so we got one in the new quadrant. And yeah, and I reckon so that was, what season would that be in, about 2001, 2002 maybe?
Yeah.
And
2000, well, obviously when we went off through the playoffs, that was 99, wasn't it?
98. So 98, then went back up 2 years later. So I think it was the season after when we got our season tickets about halfway through, because they hadn't finished building the stand yet. So we ordered it, and then we had to wait for the stand to be built. And since then, obviously, it's every home game. And then I'd say in the last 10 years or so, you probably count on one hand the amount of away games I've missed as well. Obviously, partly through working, which makes it a lot easier. But yeah, I just love it. Like I can't miss it as well. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, so I've got a mate. It's something like, I ain't gonna lie. Obviously, it's a lot easier for me that I get paid to be there. But at the same time, my mate's always like, can't believe the dedication you put in. But I said, once you get into it, like, it would just feel weird not to be there. Like, I couldn't imagine not being at Barnsley on Saturday. It was fantastic. A day out, you bump into all these Charlton fans. You've gone the length of the country and seen a different town that you might not have seen for a while or before, and then you watch the drama of a game of football. And even if it is a 1-1 draw in mid-table League One, there's still drama. There's still a story behind it. There's still something that happened. Obviously, there's a ball that may or may not have gone out this week, and the fallout from that. But then there's the fallout from, so and so played, and this player, did he have a good game? Why was he not in the squad? There's a story around everything with Charlton, and once you get into going week on week, season on season, every season has its own sort of narrative and story, and I just love following it. I love the drama of it, and I love the enjoyment of it. I love the fact that we can get a late-ish equaliser at Barnsley to make it 1-1, which means we might finish top half this season, and I'll still be absolutely buzzing that we scored a goal and things like that. It's fantastic.
Well, yeah, you can't, when you're doing your graph and you're watching those games, it must be hard to not have that in your head the whole time.
The graph is making me sad. I'm thinking of ditching it because I'm living too harshly in reality now.
Yeah.
So it gets to this sort of time of the season, it's like, oh god, we're not looking very good again.
When Apples came in, the graph was absolutely flying, wasn't it? You were loving it, and then a couple of weeks later, it's like, oh yeah, we're not. It hasn't all turned around. So I think I started. My first game was the season before we went up the first time, and I'd had my season ticket from that first Prem season. My team on paper is pretty much identical, and I wonder, do you think it's because I think we're a similar age? Were we just really lucky that we came up when we were in the Prem and we probably did have our best players? So and obviously when you're 12, 13, they're your heroes anyway. So I wonder, do you think your 11s come from the fact that when you were that sort of age, they were your heroes, or is it a case of that's just when we were lucky enough to have our best players? Basically, we just the blessed generation of support.
I think it is a bit of both, but yeah, I think it's sort of it makes me laugh. So obviously, when I was early teens and younger, we were Premier League, and that was just you almost took it for granted now because you got used to being in the Premier League. We saw some genuinely quality players, and I even look at maybe say 10 years hence when we were in League One, and I was of an age where you have that disposable income from when you started working, but you're probably still living at home. So basically, you've got enough money to go up and down the country, boozing and watching the team. And then I got the glory of winning League One and the Championship season that followed. And then obviously now I've started working the games, and I look at some of the lads who are when you see them on the train, sort of similar age to I would have been 10, 15 years ago, and I'm thinking these are the highlight years of your Charlton following career. When you're young, free and single to go out spending money and that, and you got to watch this. We had obviously we get the guest fans on Charlton Live, and we had young Sydney who came on with her dad Steve, and last year, and I remember asking, and I mean, she was sort of reminding me what it's like to be a kid. But I remember thinking, like, when I was your age, I was looking up at players who were about to get in the Premier League or were in the Premier League, and you're sort of idolising players who just in 10 years' time probably won't be remembered as much. But she still sort of had that, yeah, that way you look up to players at that age, which sort of renewed my faith a little.
Yeah, I think we were just blessed, to be honest. So, right, let's get into your team, because from experience, this can take a while, especially when you get on some of the nostalgia trips. So, how hard was it? Did you find it easy? Was it straight away, bosh, bosh, bosh? Or do you need to do the copying out thing where you're going to make about 12 honourable mentions? How did you find it?
Relatively straightforward. There was a couple, like, so in midfield, I don't think I particularly got like two wingers or anything like that. So midfield, I struggled because there's one maybe I've shoehorned in, maybe more because I liked him rather than he was the best player we've ever had in midfield. Goalie, I found easy. Back four, I think was pretty easy. Maybe right back was a little bit for me. Front two, I think, was pretty straightforward, and you'll see why when we come to that. And like I say, there are a lot of players that maybe could have got in, but you had to. I decided to take a few things sort of into hand when it came to what level they played at and that sort of stuff as well. But yeah, it wasn't too hard. It wasn't too hard for me because but there will be a lot of good names who haven't made it.
Of course. All right, well, let's do it then. The one that you said was pretty easy. Let's start with the goalkeeper.
I've gone for Dean Kiley.
Enjoy this one. That we showed Menti the 2 goals against them on Saturday, and now we see some incredible saves from you, Dino. What do you remember about this?
Well, Coach Kiley would be saying to player Kiley, "Could you have come for the cross?" And then I'm thinking, well,
I don't think you could.
Stand your ground, and then. But no, I think that one save of the season that year in the Premier League. So flying with that. But no, listen. Do you know the best thing is that I would say, and even now to the modern day, right, is look at people's reactions and look at your teammates' reactions. Look, and that tells you can't manufacture that.
Yeah. You
cannot manufacture that. Is that people reacting to we loved each other. We absolutely everyone got on like a house on fire. But listen, it's great to see people forwards reactions. So Dugarry picking me up off the floor and how you kept that out, and then the fella holding his head in his hands. That's a great feeling for a goal.
Tells you everything, doesn't it? Did many players do that?
There's some good clips you chose there as well.
I mean, that was on Charlton TV, and it's really hard not to get emotional. The way he talks about they all loved each other and all got around each other, and not to go back to like how bad it is. But I remember that's come up a lot in the show over the last few years on Charlton Live. Is you don't feel connected with the club, whereas that Kerbishley team, well, pick one of the Kerbishley teams, you felt really connected with them. It felt like they felt connected to us as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess an element of that will be success. It's a lot easier for the players to connect with the fans when there's success, but also, yeah, I mean, you find yourselves looking at the high turnover of players that they have now means it's a lot harder to form a bond with certain players. And the fact that a lot of them just aren't remotely at the level that we need to be at, and with that comes frustration that either you feel some players think they're too good to be playing for Charlton in League One, but clearly aren't, and then some just aren't anywhere near the level or don't look like they care. Whereas someone like Dean Kiley was first and foremost, probably the most important thing was good enough, and he was exceptional as a Charlton goalkeeper. He played a massive part in obviously that promotion going up as champions. But some of the saves he made in the Premier League were just incredible. He showed a couple there against Birmingham. In an away game, I think that game was televised, if I remember rightly.
Yeah,
which I probably would have watched at home back in those days. Obviously, wasn't quite old enough to be going away midweek up to Birmingham. But yeah, he just made some incredible match winning saves, and yeah, he was a character as well that sort of interacted with the crowd well. There was a clip came up on social media yesterday. After I think it was a 1-0 win at Spurs when must have been when Powley scored, of his interaction with the crowd afterwards, and so he was almost saying like look around at the stadium that we've just won at. This is little old Charlton and we're winning here, and he sort of personified that fighting against the odds that we had at that time. I think we signed him from Bury. He came from sort of lower leagues for us, and You know, he was absolutely exceptional. My favourite save was, I always remember this, we were playing Spurs at the Valley. I feel like it was a game we won quite comfortably, maybe 2 or 3-0. And Spurs used to have this little short corner routine. Well, not short corner, but an arrowed ball in towards the near post where Sheringham would turn it around the corner on the volley, going for the near top corner, but from close range at some pace. And I remember Dino getting 2 hands onto it and pushing it over the bar, and like where we were sat in the northwest quadrant, like we all jumped up like it was a goal. It was just such an exceptional save, you know, and it was us doing that against Spurs, you know, these big established Premier League sides. And yeah, he really was fantastic. Dino obviously got the penalty save away at Palace, which is a personal favourite as well. I was watching that I used to work at Sainsbury's in Bromley, and it was I was underage, but pretended I was helping hang up the decorations. So I just went in to watch the game, and Dino saving this penalty from Andy Johnson, and me and my mate who was also Charlton jumping up and like in a pub for the Palace, and yeah, they didn't like that, and they certainly didn't like what happened about 20 minutes later.
So he had 222 appearances for us, 11 appearances for Republic of Ireland. He had 664 appearances across his career, which, I mean, he's a keeper, so they're always going to be high. But now he's goalkeeping coach at Crystal Palace. Do you reckon you can forgive him that?
I just like to pretend it didn't happen, basically. Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, people have got to work, and actually, I mean, there's quite a big tradition of obviously people flitting between clubs in South London for jobs. It's just, you know, it's just part and parcel of football. Always has been, and always will be. But you know, as a Charlton legend, you know, you just have to let that one slide and you know, pretend it didn't happen.
Yeah. I was smiling a lot through that because you mentioned the Spurs game. I think half of your team. I've got a quiz for you in a bit, but I want to get through a few more of the players. So let's start with your left back. No surprises who it's going to be, but yeah, go for it. Who did you pick as your left back?
Yeah, so obviously this is partly because he was a genuinely good left back, but also because he's one of the best blokes we've ever come in the game and has done so much for the club as well, winning the League One title as manager. So obviously it has to be Sir Chris Powell.
Now Svensson. Captain's there again, looking this time for Ewell in the middle, and in behind him was Powell. Unbelievable! 2 goals in something like 150 appearances for Charlton, and they've both been scored against Tottenham.
Oh, this is incredible. He's just taken a gamble. That's all Chrissy Powell has done. Jason Ewell does well, but Ledley King, he's the culprit. He doesn't deal with it. It's just a hopeful ball in. And this is just about strength and muscle, but Ledley King doesn't deal with it. Chrissy Powell just really takes the initiative to Spurs. He's thinking, right, I'm just going to take a gamble here, and he gets...
It's fantastic, really, what we've done this season against the London sides, and we're determined to do it again tonight. And, you know, I've popped up with the goal against my beloved Spurs, you know, so I'm well pleased with that.
Beautiful, man. What a smile.
Yeah, I love the fact that I think he ended up scoring 3 times for us. So obviously we'll talk about his last goal in a minute, but from memory anyway. But I love the fact that these first 2 were both against Spurs, who he supported. And obviously went on to work for relatively recently as well. But yeah, I mean, you can just say so much. Again, he was part of that side that battled against the odds. You know, and he had a bit of quality about him. You know, I used to think he was a great crosser of the ball on his left foot. But he had great heart, you know, when we talk about someone who interacts with the fans, and Powell had that in abundance. You know, he effectively invented the tunnel jump. You know, I always remember the time he last game of the season, he disappeared down a tunnel and came back wearing Floyd the dog's head, which was pretty funny as well. But, you know, and you know, we're not talking about someone who was just, you know, a player who the fans loved. He got picked for England. I think he played about 4 or 5 times for England as well. You know, he was a very good left back. And an interesting fact is, I mentioned my first game earlier in '94. Charlton were playing Southend, and he was playing for Southend in that fixture as well. So he's been there my entire time. But yeah, you know, so many great memories. But there was one that sort of summed up. You know, I was speaking earlier about how every season and every game and every moment has its own narrative and story behind it. And you know, I think it was our first season after relegation from the Premier League, we were in the process of finishing somewhere mid-table in the Championship. Our last game of the season, we had nothing on it, but we were playing a Coventry side who could have gone down that day, although I think they survived due to other results. But, we were just sort of meandering towards a nice end of season 3-1 win, and must have been Pardew chucked on Powell for his farewell for the last 3 minutes, and we're all sort of giggling to ourselves that he put him in central midfield. And then sure enough, in the last minute, there's a flick on and there's Powell driving through and just completely mishitting the ball, and it bobbled in and he scored, and all the players lifted him on their shoulders, and he celebrated right in front of us. And I remember just going absolutely mad for a goal that, to the course of the season meant nothing, but to everyone in that ground just meant everything for Powell to score. I remember going to my nan's after and telling her about it, and she did not care a jot, but I just wanted to speak about the fact that Chris Powell had come on and scored with his last touch for the club, because it was a fantastic way to sign off his playing career with us, and then obviously he came back and done the business as a manager as well.
Well, that's it, isn't it? I mean, I didn't realise. I was going through his Wikipedia. He had 3 spells apparently. He came. I knew there was 2. I didn't realise it was 3, but he went and came back. And now he's obviously, like you said, he was involved with Spurs on the coaching staff. He's been involved with England, had a manager spell at us, and now he's the assistant coach at Sheffield Wednesday. What do you reckon he goes on to do? Do you reckon, is there any chance of him coming back to Charlton? Do you think he's too big now? What do you see him going on to do?
Well, we offered him a role at the start of the season, actually, when Dean Holden was on the ropes. He was offered to come in as some sort of mentor to Dean, which I think Dean wasn't massively happy with anyway. But then I think it was like a caretaker manager role he was offered, but he didn't believe in the project, is what I was told, by good sources at the time. So, it's obviously something that could have happened this year, but I can't see him going back into management. I just think, once you're out of the game in terms of being the lead coach for too long, then I think it's always hard to get back into it. And he seems to be happy doing what he's doing. He was well renowned at Spurs with the coaching role he did there. And, to see him in that England dugout when we were getting into the final of the Euros was actually quite something. It was quite emotional seeing him there comforting Bukayo Saka after the missed penalty at Wembley. It made you proud to think, there's Powell, and I remember thinking, Saka's in good hands there. If you ever needed the character like Powell around you, that was a good time. But yeah, in a way, to be honest, after he left Spurs, I thought he might go on a bit of a break now. But so I was slightly surprised to see he's gone for that assistant's role up at Sheffield Wednesday. But obviously, I think once you're in the day-to-day of football, I think it's hard to leave it.
Yeah.
If you've got sort of the bug like Chris Powell obviously has. And yeah, who knows what we'll go on to do. I think just because of the sort of character he is and the relationships he can manage with people, I think assistant coach is something he could be very good at. And I still feel in different circumstances we could have gone on to have done a lot more with him at Charlton as manager.
Yeah.
You look at some of the clubs he went to after in the South End were on a bit of a downward spiral. When he went there, Huddersfield weren't on a great run when he went there, and he didn't leave them in a much better place from memory, although obviously they did turn it around a little bit after. But, I think we've learned over the years at Charlton that it's not always purely on the manager's head when things don't go right. Yeah. You need the full setup behind you, and you can look at the clubs he went to and argue maybe those clubs weren't very adequately set up for success anyway. And when he was at one that was set up for success in its own way, which was obviously us in 2011-12 until the money ran out the next season, then he built a very good side and he had a record-breaking season with us.
I listened to the Mod Mag pod when they were putting it out, and I think they only had a few episodes, but listening to them talk to Murray about Powell and setting up that team, it did sound like they were on their way to that. They were already thinking about a next step up to the Prem, because by the sounds of it, you only needed, and when you look at the squad on paper, you were probably only 2 players away from being able to really push on. It's such a shame because him getting even into the playoffs in the Championship probably changes the course of the next 10 years for us. Really, it would have been that would have been fascinating, wouldn't it, to see how that could have played out if just that wrong timing for him, really. All right, let's go across your back forward then. Who do you want to go with next?
I'll go for the right back. So we've done a left back. I'll go on the other side. Another England international. I've gone for Luke Young.
Good defending from Christian Ziege. Just covered around Anthony Gardner. You could see that Gardner was going to be in trouble. Again, just look at the room that Parker's having in midfield.
And this time Young gets in behind Ziege. Good save by Sullivan. Oh, you can imagine how overjoyed he'd have been if that one had gone in.
Wow, what a chance. But again, look at the room that Scott Parker has to play that ball in behind Christian Ziege. He'd be very disappointed, Luke Young, because it's there, it's waiting. But he hits Neil Sullivan's legs.
Just a little shot of Sven at the end there as well in that clip. He's another one that was playing in that game, but yeah, go on. Why Luke Young?
He was just a very good player, you know. Again, like there was he wasn't as much of sort of one that there was like a massive fan favourite at the time. So I did find right back harder to feel because I do like my fan favourites, you know, characters and that. But he was just very confident, you know. He was a good player. I was surprised the amount of goals I could remember him scoring. Actually, a couple of ones he came up with, or moments him being involved with. So I remember, this goal he scored against Liverpool at the Valley, which was a very good finish, where he sort of arrived late. There was this game where we got absolutely battered for 40 minutes and scored twice in 2 minutes just before half time, went on to win 2-0, and he scored a very good goal in that. I think I'm fairly confident he sent in like this remarkable cross for a different away game at Spurs, which was one of my first Premier League away games that I attended. Again, because I was a bit younger and didn't have much money of my own. I didn't get too many, but I remember going away to Spurs on the coach. A game we ended up winning 3-2. And he was this like one of the best team goals I've ever seen Charlton score, and I think he sent a crossover for Bartlett. But yeah, he also made the England squad, and again he just was a part, you know, maybe a quieter part of a very good Charlton side. So yeah, he seemed like the obvious choice for right back for me.
I mean, he was solid, wasn't he? I never remember him having a bad game, and he sort of just seemed to come in, take the position, and then never lose it. I mean, he had something. I think it was, I've got it written down here, 187 appearances for us, and he was Player of the Year in 04, 05. And he sort of followed in Powell's footsteps a lot, because Powell was obviously, it was such big news when Powell got picked for England. Then Luke Young comes along a little while afterwards and gets into the England squad as well. It sort of felt like he kind of trod that same path, because before that you were never getting a player from Charlton into an England squad, and then suddenly he comes along, and then obviously Bent not long after him. It sort of paved the way, really.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, like I say, it was remarkable to. I mean, when Powley got in, there was a Chris Hu headline in the paper and that, and it was a bit insulting, really, for Charlton players to be in the England squad. But yeah, he just seemed like a natural. He seemed like a very good player, and like I say, like. I didn't remember him winning Player of the Year, so maybe that excused my bit saying it didn't feel like a fan favourite as much. But he was just good, you know. And how nice is it the fact that we used to have players that were just very good footballers, you know, in the Premier League, did their job and did it well, and you know, did it to the extent that he got called up, obviously for England. I think, you know, left us for Aston Villa, if I remember correctly. You know, he was a decent player, and yeah, popped up in a couple of memorable moments for us.
Well, according to Transfer Market, we paid $6 million for him. I can't imagine us paying that much for a defender, but that's the stat on there. But yeah, I think we got a decent amount of money for him afterwards as well. So left and right back. So you got your two centre backs. Who are you going with first?
Yeah, we'll go for. I mean, I imagine they're both quite obvious, but yeah, we'll go for Richard Rufus first.
Davis, great first-time ball for Ziege. Oh, what a good challenge again by Rufus. That'll make him feel even better, and that one. He's not hanging about.
Superb. Absolutely superb. The first one really is so important. Just look at the burst that Ziege makes. And that's so important to Spurs, if they can get him forward. And then he follows it up with a really crunchy tackle on Gus Boye. That really has left the Uruguayan down on the pitch, feeling that. Oof, that's strong.
That second challenge is a red card nowadays, I think.
100%, and that lives in my memory. So I remember that so vividly, because he'd just come back and he was my favourite player at the time. He came back, and I just remember him going straight into it. I was like, I've never loved a man more than I love this man. It was incredible. He was everywhere. Yeah,
that, and like you say, that was his first game back after quite a serious injury. So for a few months, And yeah, I remember he got some good applaud. That Spurs game is a great example. We're getting loads of stuff out of that one, but yeah, he got loads of plaudits for his performance that day. But also, again, how many players like that have we got that have great stories? And Rufus, the fact that his first ever goal for us was in the playoff final against Sunderland at Wembley, and not only that, it was like 3-4 minutes from the end and rescued us from being on the losing side of that argument just before the end of normal time. But yeah, he was a no-nonsense sort of solid centre-half. A lot of people at the time said perhaps one of the best centre-halves not to play for England sort of around that era. And I remember when, I think the first season we went up, so after the playoffs, I think he struggled a little bit that season, but he just improved as he went on. And, again, it's obviously it's a shame what became of him after that, because he, whereas we get a lot of our heroes sort of hanging around and we get to have him on a pitch for a chat or in the Charlton TV studio, he's probably, because of what happened to him after he left, has probably lost that, which is a real shame, because yeah, he was a real hero of a lot of Charlton fans of our era.
Well, he's another one that's come up through the very bougie. Love that. What is that? A little bit of Bucks Fizz you've got going on there?
It's a peach Bellini. So my wife's just had her last day of work, so she's just cracked open a bottle. So I was like, might as well.
Lovely. Bring a class to it. Lovely. I'm still drinking a cup of tea out of my Charlton mug. But yeah, another player that's come up through the ranks, and I think that's where Charlton do excel, is our academy. Obviously, it's been player after player, but I mean, he had 6 caps for the under-21s, 288 appearances for us. He was voted the greatest ever Charlton defender. I think you're right. I think that injury just comes along and just knocks him out, because when you watch that game, he's playing centre back and King's playing centre back at Spurs. King has an awful game. Rufus has an amazing game. You think suddenly that career is going to take off, but yeah, I think that injury just knocked it too much out of him for him to really come back from it. But yeah, it's a shame. I mean, I'd love to do a team of players that have had their careers go a bit dodgy after Charlton, because I think we'd have quite a strong lineup.
Well, another one of my players who I think if could have made my midfield but didn't, was certainly one who I think he's had all sorts of trouble since then. But Sean Newton was a massive hero of mine. More so probably in the Championship days than the Premier League days. But yeah, again, he carved a bit of a career out of it. But then he carved a career out of something else after, unfortunately.
It's a shame. But yeah, there you go. I mean, they can't all be angels, can they? And who's playing next to
him? So, I mean, this has got to be the only lone player in my 11, and probably one of the very few lone players you get in anyone's 11. But when we signed this chap, it just felt unreal, and it's the tank. It's George Costa.
Oh, now Gudjohnsen could be free here, away from the marking for once. And George Costa redeemed himself with a very swift recovery. Gudjohnsen was threatening to sprint clear. They were caught napping at the back for once, then shot. Gudjohnsen, only so sharp in front of goal, but George Costa made sure there was no real sign of goal for Gudjohnsen.
Yeah, that was excellent challenge, and that sort of personified a bit what he was about. So the story goes, if I remember, that he'd fallen out with, I think it must have been Porto he was at with the boss. It might have even been Jose, although I might be making that up. I might have got my timeline slightly askew there. But he wanted to go to the World Cup at the end of the season, or to the Euros with Portugal, so he needed to go out there and play regularly, and we signed him on the same day that we signed Chris Bart-Williams, funny enough. He's obviously sadly no longer with us, but he was just a phenomenon, really. Like challenges like that almost became part of the folklore of him. He was excellent. He really felt like he was a class above. The only downside is he never scored. So I always remember thinking, he deserved a goal, and his last game on the last day of the season was a 0-0 away at Old Trafford, and he either scored and it was disallowed. Yeah, I think he scored and it was disallowed, or like it was a great save or something. But yeah, so he never topped it off with a goal. But yeah, he was immensely popular in his time. He had the nickname the Tank before he came for us. He got a nice colourful song that referenced one of our local rivals as well.
Just cut off the end there on that song, didn't it?
Yeah, which was very entertaining. But yeah, he was a real sort of blood and guts defender, and yeah, brought that level of excitement, being a bit of a European star as well when he joined us.
Well, what's amazing, and I think out of the 5 episodes we've done so far, I think he's only missed out in 2 teams. He only had 24 appearances for us. That blows my mind because he has such a big impact on that team and like the memory of Charlton at its best. He had that whole back line I had the hat that had Young Fish Cost a Fortune embroidered on it. Yeah. But to think that he did make that much of an impact and only played 24 times is unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Mark Fish was another good one. Fish, unfortunately, throughout his time with us, had way too many errors in him to have made.
Falling through a glass table. What the?
Yeah, that's a big error on its own, isn't it? but yeah, he was. Yeah, I mean, yeah, he was part of that back line. Maybe that sort of helped the myth a little bit when he was on that hat. But yeah, no, it was he was very good. He covered a lot of ground, and yeah, played like I say, another one. He played a part in a Charlton team that remember very fondly.
What's amazing as well is that he came to us. He came to us after he won the Golden Ball, which is the Portuguese Player of the Year. He came to us after he'd won the Champions League as well, and he goes on to win the UEFA Cup after he'd been with us. It's not like he came to us when he was sort of on the down or on the like just making his way through. He was at his peak of his powers when he came through. So thank God he fell out with whoever he fell out with. But yeah, I've heard Kirbishley tell that story as well, and it just sounds like I've talked about it a few times. It sounds like we were just the right place at the right time, and he could shove out whoever he wanted to get in that team.
Yeah, no, it sort of shows, probably less so then, but the power that the Premier League has, and just by being in the Premier League, you can have this opportunity to attract the sort of players that you wouldn't even have dreamt of.
Yeah,
and yeah, it was such an exciting signing, and obviously, like, he lived up to everything we hoped, and it was only for half a season, but yeah, he still speaks fondly of us as well. You hear things every now and then. For example, when Chris Bart-Williams died, he gave a little mention and reminded him of his time at the club and spoke about Chris and that. But yeah, it goes to show that he enjoyed his time with us as much as we enjoyed watching him.
Like you said, I've showed a lot of those clips from that one Spurs game, 2002, March 2002. That whole back line that you've picked played in that game. And there's another, it is unbelievable. There's another 2 players that you've picked that are in the squad. I wanted to see if you wanted to have a little quiz for you, see if you can guess the rest of that lineup. On paper, it's pretty easy. But yes, Charlton against Spurs, 2002, March. Can you guess any more of those players?
So, just trying to get my timeline in my mind. So, Jensen probably played. Was he around that time?
I think he was injured because he wasn't in the lineup.
Crikey.
So I'll put you on the spot.
So 2002. So
you had Kylie Powell, Costa, Rufus, Young. One more player you've picked in your fantasy 11, one midfielders makes it into the team, and then there's one on the bench as well.
So Kish or Parker? 2002. Was Parker playing by then?
Parker was playing. He was mentioned in one of your clips as well that you've already played.
Yeah, yeah, he was there celebrating. Yeah. So was Robinson still there on the bench?
Robinson was on the bench.
Yeah.
Do you want me to give you the rest?
Yeah, go on. No, well, I'm guessing up tops would have been someone like JJ.
No. Again, I think he must have been injured.
Yeah. Go on, my timeline's going to be well off here. Jason Yule then, maybe?
Yeah, Jason Yule. Yeah.
Yeah. Do we have 2 up top?
Yeah. Great player with him as well. Never got enough goals, but worked his absolute bollocks off.
Lisby?
No.
Oh, this is going to wind me up now.
That's all I want to do with this podcast, just wind people up trying to think of Charlton.
So great player who didn't get enough goals was a striker. Sean Bartlett?
No.
No, all right. Okay. So Bartlett scored twice in my trip to White Hart Lane, which must have been the season after.
Yeah. I think
yeah. No, go on, fill in the gaps because I'm going to pull my hair out otherwise.
Well, the other striker is Matt Svensson.
Oh, Sven, yeah, I met him once. Yeah, I met him outside after he signed for Norwich. I met him outside Carrow Road, one of my very rare, like I say, Premier League away games. My mate from school, Dad, give us a lift up there. And the one thing I said to him was, "Oh, great to see you, Matt. Don't score today, please." And he scored the 80th minute winner or something.
He was a workhorse. I absolutely love that guy, but yeah, he just didn't get enough goals, did he? You mentioned, and so you're gonna we were playing 5 at the back, and it was John Fortune playing alongside Costa and Rufus. You had Bart Williams and Stewart. I don't remember Bart Williams blowing that many doors off, to be honest. Like
no, he was a bit of a utility player by the time he came to us. Like filled a bit of a gap. But yeah, Graham Stewart's probably unlucky not to be in there actually, but. I've shoehorned someone else in who was probably more heart than head, which we'll come to into the midfield.
All right, should we jump in? Who do you want to start with in your midfield?
Yeah, so all right, we'll do the one I've shoehorned in slightly. So he came back for a game maybe 5 or 6 years ago, just to visit the club, and Terry got him in the studio to do an interview. And I said to Terry, like, you do the interview because you'll have a better memory of his time to ask the pertinent questions than I will. Well, I stood at the back for 5-10 minutes thinking I'm going to have a photo with him in a sec. And I was shaking with excitement to the extent that Sue was also in the room and said I could literally see you shaking because I was about to have my photograph taken with Radistan Kishchev.
Yeah, that game, my friend yesterday remember me that game and I watched it. But it was quite even. I won many balls against him. Also, I kick him, of course, because that kind of player is very difficult to catch him. But I think when I watch the highlights of the game, I did it all right. And then we changed the shirts. That shirt's still at home.
Just talking about kicking Cristiano Ronaldo up and down the pitch. What a player he was.
Yeah, that particular game as well. I think that must have been pretty much the first away game Man United played after.
Yeah.
Was it Ronaldo joined, or I don't know if it was a Ronaldo incident with Rooney. I think it might just be when he joined, but he was this flair boy, and when the Premier League, we weren't quite ready for the highlighted hair European flair boys at that point, and we were all these savages who just wanted them kicked off the pitch by our Bulgarian workhorse in midfield. And Kish certainly delivered with that. But there was so much that I liked about Kish. That first of all, that he was one of the hardest working players you've ever seen, and he knew what his limitations were. And you know, fans of every club will always say this, but that's something that wins me over, probably more so than it should do. But we've had players in recent years who you feel like don't try hard enough, don't put the yards in, and Kish was never one to shirk that responsibility, and with that came the fact that he could break up play quite well. You know, that was his role, and you know, I think there were elements of his game where, you know, he was prone to the odd dodgy back pass. You know, I always remember the game against Blackburn where Friedel scored for them and Jensen ended up scoring the winner for us, but their first goal to get back into that came from Kish playing the ball straight to, it must have been Andy Cole or someone.
Yeah.
And he used to do that quite a bit. But he, like I say, he always made up for it by the fact he never hid with his work rate. I remember he scored. I think he only scored maybe twice, and I feel like they were in consecutive home games, one against Everton and one against West Ham. The West Ham game was like this incredible 4-2 game, which I'll probably speak about with two of my other midfielders actually, because they both scored and played in that. But yeah, I'm one of those who would feel sorry for a player if I thought they were getting unnecessary stick, and someone working their backside off would always win me over. One thing I do remember is when he came back to the Valley with Brighton, it must have been League One, and they beat us 4-0, and he sort of played the sort of sitting midfielder role. And it was probably the most I'd ever seen him use the ball at the Valley, but you just saw another side of this game. But yeah, I remember being massively fond of Kish, and yeah, the chance I got to have my photograph taken with him was genuinely one of the highlights I've had in the last 10 years. That and receiving Simon Church's last ever match worn shirt. He was another one who certainly had his shortcomings, but he worked hard and won me over by that. And
yeah, 100%. Everything you said there, I completely agree with. But I thought you were talking about another player, but you were 100% right. Kish, he just was an absolute workhorse, and that's why you love him. I think, did we buy him as a right back and he moved to sort of right midfield, or was it the other way around? Because he just sort of seemed to cover that whole right side.
Yeah, so yeah, we signed him as a right back, and yeah, I feel like he was sort of like a quite mobile player. So not obviously not quite the same role, but like the way someone like Dobson feels like you can cover a lot of ground, and he
Yeah.
used to do that. And like I say, he used to get involved a lot with stepping in and breaking up play and kicking, like kicking people when you had to. But he was one of those that does the dirty work. So some of the flair midfielders we had at that time could actually do what they had to do, and yeah, he was just one of my favourites. I got his name on the back of at least one of my shirts back in the day, which wasn't cheap, with his name
Yeah.
when he used to charge by the letter.
It is amazing, Pat. I mean, in terms of, I think he had 179 appearances for us, but only 2 goals. But everyone loved him. He just worked so hard. I don't think there's anything you can say bad about him, apart from, because like you said, looking at your midfield, you say it's a bit uneven, but one of your centre midfielders, I kind of had the exact opposite opinion. But who do you want to go with next? Who's your next midfielder?
We'll go on the wing, the only probably out and out winger I've chosen, which is again, and this is sort of the way his sort of time with the club ended. I think he was on a bit of a downer, and he was struggling by the end of the time he was with us. But all throughout, going up from the Championship and then winning the Championship again, and some of those incredible early moments in the Premier League, he played with so much heart. And again, one who was massively popular with the fans, which was Johnny Robinson.
Fingertips to it. A fantastic finish to a quite extraordinary game. Jensen's corner. Kinsella. And it's in! Robinson! John Robinson scores! What a comeback from Charlton!
What a player. Everything you said about Kish is exactly how I feel about Robinson. And when you're talking about workhorses, I remember Jacko saying it about his team, Johnny Jackson saying, that's what I want, that's the minimum, that's what we need to get. And I sort of felt we were building like that. You don't get players like Kishishev and John Robinson anymore. They just don't exist. Dobson's the closest we've got, but it's a far cry from those guys.
Yeah, I mean, he was just like remarkable. The thing I loved about Johnny Robinson is the fact that he played like a fan, like he like the way he conducted himself on the pitch, like you just showed the celebration of his goal against Man United, like he's going absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
But you'd see that he'd give it to the refs, he'd play up to the crowd a bit. Partly, I always remember a game. It might have been the 97-98 promotion season, but early on in the season, it might have been the season before. A 0-0 game against Bury, which I'm guessing Dino must have been playing for them. So getting John Robinson's autograph on the side of the pitch when he was sub as well. So obviously that helps as well. But yeah, so many sort of moments like that. And again, like he had quality, and that's the thing that I don't think you get into someone's best 11 purely on heart. You had to have a little bit about him. And when he was in his pomp, you forget how long he was with us actually before we got promoted. I think he played in the Back to the Valley game. That's how long he was with us. But he was a good crosser of the ball when he was first there. He scored some excellent and some important goals. I mean, in terms of just a proper long ranger, I don't think I've seen many better than the one he scored away at Huddersfield. I think it was sort of between Christmas and New Year in about 98, 99, so the season after.
Yeah.
So it must have been 99, 2000. So it might have been our last goal of the millennium or something like that. Like this remarkable long range goal we scored against Huddersfield. But yeah, no, he played with heart. And like I say, I remember. So by the time we got back up to the Prem, he was sort of like one of those players that the fans were getting a bit tired of. He'd run his race, and when he was coming on or starting games for us, he wasn't really performing that well, and he was getting the sarcastic cheers when being taken off, which actually hurt me a lot at the time because he had been a hero for such a long time. But like I say, you can't take away the career he had with us, and like I say, he had that element of playing like I like to think we would all play. Like we'd go out there, do our best, but actually, if something went right, we'd be going around running around crazy, celebrating the way he did. And I actually had the pleasure of maybe 5 or 6 years ago interviewing him for our pod. I did like a 25-minute over the phone with him, and I just found it again absolutely fascinating. Speaking to someone like him who, played such a big part in like I say, our formative years. I imagine he must be right up there as one of your favourites as well. From
He's
from
head
watching
and
the club.
shoulders. I think it goes John Robinson, Herman Haridason, and then there's probably about 4 or 5 after that. But John Robinson, he was the first player that I had on my shirt. He was the one that my dad liked, and I sort of watched him, and that was how you played football. And I think you're right. That's how fans would, and that's probably why I was shit, because you try and run around doing everything. You've got none of the talent to back it up. It doesn't really work. But he embodied what Charlton was in terms of working hard, celebrating every moment he was on the pitch. I absolutely loved it. He scored 35 goals for us, and one thing I always forget is that he scored the first sudden death goal in the playoff final as well, which is mad to think. But yeah, and it was a shit pen. I watched the video of it again. It was an absolutely terrible pen, but it went in. And yeah, like you said, it's a shame that it sort of he faded out. He still had 30 appearances for Wales though, and you think like he's getting in on that left-hand side, or he's getting on the wing, and Giggs is sort of coming through at the same time. That's pretty impressive to be able to do that.
Yeah, and again, I mean, obviously it's for Wales, so it still counts. So it's still international football, and I remember thinking like, wow, someone playing for Charlton's playing international football is amazing. I'm fairly confident with the penalty. I'm fairly confident he told me either. I think he said that was the first penalty he's ever taken, or perhaps the first one he missed or something. Yeah, I feel like that was him that said that. And that's like he obviously, as you say, was the first one to take the sudden death one, so he really didn't want to do it. But yeah, it was went in. They all count, don't they?
Exactly,
Michael Gray, I wish his penalty was as shit as Johnny Robinson's one was.
Right, you've got 2 centre mids. Who are you going for first?
Two choices. So I'll save the second one to last because I maintain it's the best player I've ever seen play for Charlton. But one of my favourites, and both of these actually when they left the club, I found really heart-wrenching. But yeah, the first one I go for is Klaus Jensen.
Arsenal looking a little casual, and Vieira has got a job on his hands here, and Klaus Jensen's chip is absolutely awesome. And Charlton go 3-1 up at Highbury, and you can see what it means to them. A concerned look on the face of Arsene Wenger, and no wonder, because Arsenal dithered and dallied, and of all people, it was Vieira. It wasn't the best of throws from Ashley Cole, who's had a nightmare start to the second half, but Vieira got...
A bad choice of clip there, was it?
And again, you're not the first person to pick him, so I've gone for a few. But I would say, though, and I want to hear everything lovely you've got to say about Jensen, I really do. But I would say everything that you just said about Kish and Robinson is the exact opposite of what I'd say about Jensen.
In terms of hard working and that sort of stuff.
I thought he was a lazy, swanning around, do the fancy stuff. To the point where I was getting so pissed off that he was getting chosen above Robinson that I wrote a letter. I must have been about 14. Wrote a letter to the club going, I don't know what the fuck he's doing in training, but I can't see why he's getting on the pitch, because he'd pop up with those, which were great. But for me, he wasn't playing the way I thought you needed to play.
Yeah, and again, he was probably that almost like the catalyst of us becoming a proper Premier League side, in that we could step away a little bit from having players who had to do all the hard work, and we could almost carry like the flair players like him, because I mean, in terms of like Silk, like I'm not sure I've seen such a smooth player as Klaus Jensen. Literally probably as smooth and silky as all those fags he was smoking during the time he was playing with us, because he just had this element of class. Where I've always said, like, I've never seen a player score a tap in and make it look incredible as Klaus did away at West Ham once. I think it was really early, like a 2-0 win at West Ham, and we were 1-0 up after 4 minutes, and the ball broke to him about 4 yards out, and he pinged it top corner like it was a free kick from 30 yards out. And I just remember thinking, like, that's incredible. I mean, there's goals which everyone remembers, like the Arsenal game, and I was lucky enough to have been at Highbury but we were in the North Bank, so my dad had blagged someone's season tickets or some company's season tickets in the home end for us. And I mean, if you remember the way that game panned out, we were getting absolutely battered in the first half, 1-0 down. And then Brownie scored out of nowhere, and I like telling Brownie this story, like how because that goal, Brownie's goal, came out absolutely nowhere, to the extent it caught me and my dad sort of unawares, and we both jumped up in North Bank Upper. The goal went in right in front of us. And then sort of like my dad, I was only like 13 at the time, if that. Yeah, about 13. And my dad sort of caught wind of his senses. Like, sit down, you got to calm down. And the second goal went in not long after, and I was up, and my dad was like, no, you can't do that again, you sit out. And then he overheard a steward at half time say, a couple of Charlton down the front there, or his mate overheard a steward say, some Charlton down the front there, we've got to be careful. If they go up again, they got to go. So obviously we're thinking, well, it's not going to be a problem. So we're not going to score a third goal. And sure enough, not only do we score a third goal, we score like quite simply the best goal we've ever scored. Like an unbelievable strike. I remember just turning to my dad with a smile on my face, going, "It was a good goal, wasn't it?" Like, not being able to celebrate it properly. And I mean, I just love watching that. I mean, I think that's my favourite ever Charlton goal, and the way it hits the bar and then the post and then creeps in. And to be fair, it probably personifies just what I was saying. So it came from the workhorses like your JJs and that closing in on, was it Vieira, I think?
Vieira,
and nicking the ball off him.
Vieira. It's not like it's fucking a sub or
something like that.
Yeah.
So there was your hard work, and it breaks to your class, Jensen. And it was just like, as the commentator said, he had nothing on. Like, I mean, most players would have taken it to the byline or held it up like Dan Carnu did the other day for that goal for Alfie May, but not class. And he just floated over, and that was an incredible goal. And there was another one. You know, there's loads of goals he scored that were excellent goals. He loved scoring goals at Highbury, funny enough. He scored a great free kick there for us. Fairly confident he scored an incredible chip there for Fulham as well, and maybe one more free kick for Fulham. But yeah, he had a really good record at Highbury. But there was one goal that came up on the timeline a couple of months ago. Plenty of shots that Davey runs that. He's got a good eye for memorable moments. And there was this goal we scored away at Birmingham at St Andrews, where it was quite a nice little passing move, but Jensen's in on the left-hand side, and you're thinking, right, who's he going to square to? And he just, somehow, with barely moving, he just drags the ball from his right to his left, sits the keeper down, and then from what feels like quite a tight angle, just rolls it in. Again, it's just that level of ability and like I say, class that he brought to the side that was a level above what we were used to. You know, as we say, we were used to those players who could work hard and earn your luck, whereas he was sort of like the player who had the ability to do very little, but then when he did have to do something, he could make it something quite special. And like I say, like he played a part in this midfield. There was sort of like this half a season where I became obsessed with the way we could move the ball in midfield. I always remember this away game at Newcastle that was on telly. We ended up losing 3-1. I think it was a contentious decision. They were a bit wound up, but I remember like we were always in the game. And I remember watching how we used to break over the halfway line in midfield, and it was more sort of quality of passing than pace. And I remember Jensen being a big part in how I thought we could move the ball in that midfield at that time. And yeah, he was when we were on holiday. We were on holiday at some caravan park in France when he got sold to Fulham.
Yeah,
and I remember my dad. Whether he would have got a text message at that time, or it would have been a paper that we'd seen from the day before or something. And my dad telling me just moping around the rest of the holiday. And then I remember literally 2 hours later, we were walking back towards our caravan, and Dad pointing it out saying something about that sky blue caravan, and immediately sky blue was like, oh, that's a football colour. I started moaning about Jensen leaving again. He said, for some reason I knew you were going to say that as soon as I said sky blue, because it's like something you hear in football a lot. And I was devastated when Klaus left, and he scored against us as well, actually, for Fulham at Craven Cottage, which
he was.
I remember that.
Yeah, I mean, I can appreciate it now, but at the time I didn't see it at all. I think he was probably a bit like Romadal as well, was a bit like it, where he's just a bit too good for us maybe, and he played, I think he's played 47 games. He had a massive impact. Looking back on it, you can see it, but no, I think that midfield though worked so well, and you're 100% right, because he had the workhorses around him. And the only time I think we had a better midfield than that was when we had Smertin and Murphy, and it was only got half a season, but again that was the kind of thing where Smertin would I was obsessed with that midfield, because he just seemed to be everywhere. He covered everything, tackled everyone, then give it to Murphy, and Murphy would play these balls that I'd never seen a Charlton player play before. But yeah, you look back at it, and Jensen did things in the Charlton shirt that I think you can only dream of, and probably won't see again for a long time.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at his wiki. So he got 16 league goals for us. I'd willing to bet my house that 15 of those were worldies in some respect, even if they were tap-ins.
Yeah, unbelievable. Sorry, it's 47 appearances for Denmark. He actually made 122 appearances.
Yeah, I was going to say, that was lower than I was expecting.
Yeah, no. The thing is, I write down all my stats and I can't read my handwriting, so that's particularly out. All right, so you want to leave the next centre mid to last. So who do you want to go? You've got 2 up front. Who are you going for first?
Yeah, so shall I go for the striker next? Shall I?
Well, up to you. If you want to go across the midfield, absolutely fine.
Well, I don't mind finishing off the midfield, but I would like to say I will say this is the player I say is the best I've ever seen in a Charlton shirt, and definitely the most hurt I've ever been by a player that left. I'll tell you a funny story about how that came, how I sort of expressed that hurt in a minute. But yeah, this was unbelievable midfielder we had. Is Mr. Scott Parker.
Jewell loses the possession. Parker forward. This is Charlton's opportunity. Still Parker. Can he finish? He can! Would you believe it? Would you believe it? Terry Venables slumps to his seat, and Scott Parker may have won the day for Charlton Athletic here against a distraught Leeds United, who simply cannot believe what is happening to them in life right now. Parker took them all on beyond Woodgate. Slipped it wide of Robinson, but you have to say the challenges were futile, and Scott Parker has perhaps won a famous victory at Ellen Road for Charlton Athletic. Their first ever against Leeds in the Premier League.
Right. Before you go into it, I'm going to say a few things. So, number one is Parker's one of only 2 players with a 100% record. He's been in everyone's team. Number 2, I'm not allowed to say anything about him anymore because I get quite upset and frustrated and start calling him all sorts of names. And number 3 is that goal is one of the things I don't think you see too much of a Parker. We remember like how much of he was a workhorse, he had technical ability, but that's up there with Giggs and Owen against Argentina. Like that goal is him going around about 5 or 6 players. But the hurt and the pain, I can't say anything. So please take it away.
Yeah, I mean, so it's purely on that goal for starters. I have quite fond memories of that one as well. So again, obviously this was before I had the disposable income to going up and down the country, but also this was sort of before like mobile phones had the internet and that. So that game weren't on TV. I wonder if Leeds might, for some reason we were playing on the Sunday, and it coincided with like one of my brother's birthdays. So we just gone out for a bit of lunch, dinner, whatever time the game was. I think it was sort of lunchtime kickoff. And rather than being able to look up on Twitter what the score was, we were relying on texting my brother, one of my other brothers, who wasn't as into football as us, but knew how to look on teletext and that. And so, yeah, at one point in the dinner, he just texted us to say, full time 1-1, because we got 1-1 about 10 minutes from the end, Lisby scored. So as far as we knew, it finished 1-1, and we had no other way of checking it. And we remember rushing back from dinner to get in for the Premiership, which was on ITV then, just to see the goal. And so you can imagine our reaction when we were watching it. We saw the equaliser, and all of a sudden, the commentator said, "But it didn't finish there." And obviously, see Parker go through. Like, what's going on here? So we actually got to celebrate that goal in real time, like jumping around as if, because we just didn't know. And it's incredible to think that could have happened back then. But yeah, he did score a couple of goals like that for us. So there was another one at home to Southampton, where again I feel like it might have been near the end of the season or the last day of the season, where he weaved through quite a few players, which really isn't that well remembered. It's always stuck in my mind for some reason. But he was just the epitomised the box to box element of midfield for us. Yeah. So he was one of those players who was absolutely everywhere. And again, the blood and guts which you needed. So I referenced the home game against West Ham. So Klaus Jensen scored an absolute stunner free kick in that game. Kishishev scored the last minute goal in that game. It went back and forth. It weren't a great West Ham team. They were near the bottom, but it sort of went back and forth. But one of the best stories of that game was like the running battle that went throughout, particularly the first half, between the former Charlton hero Lee Bowyer at the time, who came back as sort of like a little villain because he was playing for West Ham.
Yeah.
And Parker, who was our favourite, and they had each other around the throat and they were pushing and shoving each other all game. They kept having these little battles, but Parker scored an excellent goal to make it 1-1 in that game. Then Jensen scored just before half-time with this incredible free kick. And it was just one of these sort of blood and guts games that was just fantastic. And like I say he's the best player I've ever seen play for us. You know, there were games where you remember seeing him clear one off the goal line, and then 10 seconds later he seemed to be involved in an attack at the other end of the pitch. He was all energy. Again, had a class on the ball about him, which I think probably is slightly misremembered by some. You know, went on to have an excellent Premier League career. Again, you feel like a lot of people say, what happens if he'd stayed with us that year? Would he have had a little bit more, I don't know, sort of money in the bank to then try and make the stately claim for the England team at the time, which I think he would have. You know, he did get into it to England squads, but he never quite became that standout star that I thought he could, because he had that 6 months or whatever it was at Chelsea where he sort of didn't play as much. And I remember being absolutely gutted when he left. I always sort of say, like now, so, you know, there's talk about, you know, what happens if Corey Blackett-Taylor leaves, or what happens when Carlin Grant leaves as you get over the last few years. And I've got to the stage now where it's just not a shock to me anymore, and you sort of get used to players have to put themselves ahead of it. But at the time when I must have been 13, 14, 15, and he went, I was absolutely gutted. I remember writing like a blog or something. Me and my mates all used to have little blogs when we were in school, and I don't know if you guys used to do that, but writing like loads of stuff about how much he wound me up and how I hated him and how he was greedy, just going for the money. You know, we all said back in those days. But then it really, that anger inside of me really came to the fore. Maybe about 6 weeks after he went. So I was doing my GCSEs at the time, and one of my GCSEs was business studies, and for some reason, we had a business studies trip to Stamford Bridge to do a tour of the ground. I still can't really work out how that fitted in with business studies at all. But they took us to a tour of the ground. So that was the first time I went to Stamford Bridge. I remember it. So the night before they played Arsenal, so I remember walking around the ground. There was loads of like discarded programs everywhere, and I sort of found it interesting. It was like there'd been a game, but so yeah, I did two things which, looking back on, I'm not massively proud of. The first was I printed off loads of little wanted posters with his face on, and just I left one in the dressing room, and it said "wanted for being a money grabbing bastard" or something like that with his face on. And also, probably even more petty, I assume they cleared that up before the next time they went in, but probably even more petty was, you know, we went into the Chelsea club shop, and they had loads of like pre-printed shirts with what your favourite player you could buy, and I hid all the Scott Parker ones behind other players so no one could buy a Scott Parker shirt. But funnily enough, actually, so obviously he went on to be Fulham manager, and we played Fulham in the Champ a few years ago, and I had to interview him, and actually I'm over it now.
Feel that
No, so I'm over it now. So I sort of understand. Once you've been around long enough, you sort of understand why players move on, especially in that day and age. And, you know, it's a short career, and, you know, he came back and scored for Newcastle and the way he celebrated was a bit of a sour point. But, you know, we're all grown ups now. We all understand. I actually remember thinking during the interview, like, he was the best player I ever saw play for Charlton, so you got to respect that overall. But don't tell Terry Smith that, because he will bite your head off if you ever tell him.
I'm with Terry all day long. I mean, I think you're right. I think once your heart's broken once, it's hard to break it the same way again. And some of the players we've let go, it's never going to compare. Like that age we were and how it happened. And also, you think, like, if he stays on a bit, he probably gets. He's a big fish in a small pond. I think it's karma. I put it all down to karma now. That's the only way I can. The best stat I've got about Parker is that he got sacked after 12 games at Bruges. So that kind of sums it up. No, I can't find love in my heart anymore. All right, that's a great midfield though. Let's go up front. Who are you going for first?
Yeah, I mean, I think these two are obvious. So again, we've got one which is the best striker I've ever seen play for us, and again, levels that you play consistently at come from. One which is obviously just gave us the best memories as Charlton fans, and also it helps that when I was 10 years old, I was able to run around the playground with people changing like a couple of syllables of my surname, and I was a Charlton hero, and I still get called this surname by a lot of my mates. So of course it's got to be Clive Mendonca.
to be involved in probably one of the best games at Wembley in the playoffs was such a highlight. I scored quite a few hat-tricks in my career, but to get a hat-trick at Wembley, it's something you dream of.
Whose side are your family on today?
It's a bit off and off really, but everybody wants me to score, like, you know. A lot of them have said, I hope you score and you get beat, but I think we'll win.
I just want. There's no need to show the goals anymore. You just love that side of him. He's just you seem like such a good bloke.
Yeah, like and just such a revolutionary goal scorer. And without, obviously we quite fairly talk about, the achievements of someone like Alan Curbishley and where he dragged our club to. But without that goal scoring season when we signed him, we never would have got that year in the Premier League. We never would have gone on the journey that we've been in. We were on for that 10 years and where we, even where we find ourselves now. But yeah, it's just a remarkable goal scorer. Again, another one whose career was unfortunately cut short with injuries. But that moment, that hat trick at Wembley was just an unbelievable achievement.
It's not like he just scored a hat trick. It's not like he just scored a hat trick. Each goal is unbelievable. It's probably one like each goal you could put in a top 10 of Charlton goals of all time. They're all so good.
I mean the presence of mind to turn and finish like he did for the first one, the control of the bouncing ball for the second one is just one of the most impressive bits of skill you'll see, and again the composure. And then I don't even know what you call the third one, but to control it in mid-air, kill it dead, volley it in under the pressure he's under with the ball fizzed in at the pace it was fizzed in at, and then to score a penalty, and then again you add on all that storyline about the fact he's a Sunderland fan, and I'm sure you've heard the story about, which is just a funny one that follows it up, about how he bumped into Michael Gray on holiday a few weeks later, like the one bloke he didn't want to see, which is such a great story as well. But obviously Michael didn't see, Clive didn't mind. But yeah, again, he's one of those like because of what he achieved and what we achieved in that game at Wembley. Every year when the playoffs come round, it gets a mention. And it is folklore. And like I say, his surname's a bit like my surname. So I was Louis Mendez, when I was on the playground and that, which it's amazing how important that can be to like a player at that age. And and he was just a class goal scorer, which is what you love to see. And you hear about work with someone like Paul Mortimer every now and then, and you talk about when you've got someone like him in your side, you've always got a chance because he can get you a goal. It's very similar to us now with Alfie May. He's sort of dragging the rest of them through almost. But Clive, we could almost afford to go a goal down because Clive would get you a goal. I remember, there's loads of very fond memories. Obviously, that aside from the playoff final, I always remember this game against Barnsley. Must have been the first game after we came down after the first season in the Prem, and he scored a volley after about 8 minutes and then got a hat trick, 2 penalties. And I just remember, I think it was a class goal, and it just saying like, if we've got Mendonca, we've always got a chance. And obviously the second time around with the promotion, it sort of pivoted more to Andy Hunt because of his injuries and that. But yeah, he was just a remarkable player and a cult hero, and someone it just fills you with pride that everyone knows who Clive Mendonca is. If you're a football fan of any particular era, over your like 20s and that, you're aware of the Clive Mendonca game, and yeah, like it just makes you so proud that you were there to witness that. And yeah, again, it's a shame really. Again, he doesn't really talk about it much now. He's sort of gone to his life that he lives, but he did come down for. We had some sort of Legends game, didn't we, a few years ago, and he came down, and I got a very brief chance to speak to him for the pods. Like literally everyone was speaking to him, so I think we were told like you've got a minute, which I've never had with an interview before. Normally people are like, well, I ain't got much else going on, but he was so in demand. But I had a chance to have my photograph with him as well, and that's like, just mind blowing to speak to someone who's just so well known, and like I say, means that our club has a very special place in a lot of people's memories for that game. It was an absolute hero.
It's up there with Chris Power playing for England. Those little things they put Charlton on the map, and they're important because when you're a kid and you're looking for a team to support, it's great if your dad takes you along like you and I had, but if you're looking for a club, you need things like that, and has to happen for us, for the fan base to get bigger. I
Yeah.
always.
I was going to say he gave me one of my weird, like, again, a proud moment that won't mean anything to anyone who's sort of younger now, but because we got promoted that year as well, around Christmas that year, I got FIFA 99.
Yeah,
that was the first time Charlton were ever on a computer game like that. So I just remember, like, again, just feeling we proper hit the big time, and that was because of players like him.
Yeah, 100%. I think I always like I probably what's the word? It's probably not right that I think this, but I think it's sad that he's working in that factory, because he's got so much to offer the football world, and you think having someone around the club like that can't be a bad thing. But do you think it's because he was such a natural goal scorer, and it seemed to be second nature to him? Do you think you can't coach what he knows? Maybe that's the only reason I can think that he's not still involved in football or still not coaching, because people will pay hand over fist for a striker like that now. Why is it that you can't take Clive Mendonca and put him in the dressing room and just get him to coach, maybe not May, but like Kanu or players like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I guess that would have had to have been a decision made shortly after he retired. But again, maybe because of the way he retired through injury, maybe that played a part in it. Obviously, I mean, there's all sorts of suggestions about what happens, after he stopped playing football as well. But he's gone back to almost working the day job, doing he was, last I heard, I assume he's still there in the Nissan car factory. Maybe that's just where he felt most comfortable. Maybe he wasn't really one massively for the limelight after his career died down. But
he does seem shy, doesn't he? Whenever I've seen him in interviews, and you'll know better than me, he does seem like quite a shy guy.
Yeah, I think to an extent, yeah. And like I say, he didn't seem to give up many interviews. Like, he came up, obviously, when we played Sunderland again in the League One playoff final. Obviously, that was such a massive story that people wanted to speak to Clive, and I think he spoke to a few people at the time. But yeah, he just almost sort of went back to, being your standard northeastern guy, worked in the car factory and sort of kept his head down and did what he had to do. I mean, the sad thing about Clive Mendonca, if Clive Mendonca played 10 years later, he never would have had to work another day in his life. Like, if you think of some of the amount of money we were playing, some of the crap players we had in the Premier League, like Jimmy Traore and that. You imagine what someone like Clive Mendonca would have been worth 10 years later. Even like someone like Brownie would have made a very good career out of.
Oh, absolutely. And also, their injuries would have been dealt with better. So do they come back? I mean, I know Brownie's spoken about that on a couple of podcasts before. If he had what they had now, his career would have lasted longer as well.
Yeah, it could have been very, very different. I mean, you see, like, some of the players of Brownie's era, and speaking with Brownie, actually, see how much of an effect their careers have on them even now in terms of injuries and stuff. It's quite remarkable, really, and you want. I think there was one player. So I think it was Julian Dix was on the coaching staff when we were in the Champ. Can't remember which team he was on, but literally when you looked at him, like, he could barely stand up straight, and all from injuries from his career. It was remarkable that how unfit players of even that era, which to us feels relatively recent. How they are compared to now.
Yeah, 100%. Right, we've already gone. We're over the hour and a half mark. It's been amazing. I've got a couple more questions for you, but let's do your final player in your Charlton Fantasy 11. Who's the last striker? No surprises, really, is it?
Yeah, no, not really. And again, just in terms of absolute quality, doing it at the highest level for us, no surprise. And I'm sure I won't be the first one to pick Darren Bent.
Caldwell is back. It's Bent, and it's 3. What a super finish from Darren Bent. 2 goals on his debut, and Charlton are home and dry now. Charlton will not be denied now, because Darren Bent has scored 2 excellent goals on his debut for Charlton Athletic. Brian Hughes it was with the clearance. Only Bent and Caldwell were up there. Bent had no help and needed no help.
Second debut go there. I mean, I was looking at a team going, God, Murphy, Thomas, Bent. Why was that? Why did that team not go into? Oh yeah, Brian Hughes was playing as well. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, that was Curbs' last season, wasn't it? And Darren Bent was just remarkable. I mean, the way he started his career with us. So I don't know. I'm probably not fair to say it was a gamble, but we signed a striker from the Championship. You don't see. I feel like you don't see that in the Premier League nowadays, do you? Like,
or you're getting too many players from oh God, how
Yeah.
Brexit do I sound? But it is just, I think there is a thing of like, if someone's done it in the top level abroad, that means more than the Championship here.
Yeah, and I feel like you don't see a great deal of strikers signing from the Championship and being a real hit in the Premier League. Obviously, you'll have your examples over recent years, but yeah, that it felt like he needed to hit the ground running, and he did. Like, I think he went on a run of scoring at the start of his time with us. Obviously, those 2 goals on debut were particularly impressive, but I just love that the sort of the natural finish for that second goal there. I mean, the first goal was a really weird one where he was sort of through 1-on-1, but at a really tight angle, and he had about 20 seconds on the ball waiting for the shot and finished it really well. But that second one was, right at the end of the game. We were 10 men, we were probably hanging on, and he showed the pace and showed the energy and the pace and the natural finishing ability across the keeper. It makes it look easy, but those finishes can be harder than you think in that stage of a game. And yeah, he was just a natural goal scorer. Again, one of those that worked really hard, but he brought that level of quality to it, and had pace to burn. If we're talking about goals where he finished games off late on, there was one of my favourite Darren Bent goals, which was a game against Birmingham at home. Not a particularly good Birmingham side, but I think we were in a bit of a situation where we needed a result. We'd been on a bit of a run. We were 1-0 up against Birmingham. We were really hanging on for almost all of the second half. And then right late on, someone just punted the ball down the pitch, and Mario Melchiot had literally like 20 yards head start on Bent, and he overtook him, finished it in top corner, and the ground just went crazy because we've been hanging on for ages, and that sealed it. But yeah, he was just a natural goal scorer. And, if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have had any chance of staying up the season that we went down when it wasn't that close at the end of it, but he gave us a fighting chance. And
now you've mentioned it, do you want to see? I've got the Melchiot goal here.
Yeah.
Most of them. Let's just play it again.
Cleared by Hughes. And Bent will chase, and he could get there ahead of Melchiot. It's Darren Bent! It's 2-0.
Unbelievable.
It's just like that's like watching a foot race between, like, I don't know, Darren Bent and me, really. It was so slow, but it just killed the game. You could hear it in the crowd that was just a massive relief that moment. I feel sad thinking about what the Valley was like back in those days. Like, because all the while we were in the Premier League, like, a lot of it was against the odds, but also we were packed and we were there. We were as one, and there was a lot of us, and it was loud. We really believed in it, and it's just even like your run-of-the-mill Saturday afternoon league games in midwinter, like that one was just so different to the experience we have now. But yeah, Darren obviously was a big part in that. Like I say, I think he was the most natural goal scorer we had at that sort of level. The only one who's properly done it at that level. So we've had some strikers in our time. Obviously, like JJ was popular, but he was never anywhere near Darren Bent sort of level. And then you had sort of, it always makes me laugh now. At the time, I used to think Sean Bartlett was bang average, but back at it now, and you think he's one of the greatest heroes we've ever had. But something like Darren Bent was just quality, and it was a nice story. Like I say, the way we signed him, like someone who'd earned his stripes at a lower level, and we picked him up. Curbs had the foresight to go and sign him and take that risk on a player like him. And it always made me upset when he got like the rough end of it at Spurs a little bit with their fans, and obviously the way Harry spoke out about him after a missed chance, which I don't think would have helped his confidence. But Darren was still delivering for me a few years later. I mean, we must have been relegated by then, but I remember he was at Sunderland, and they weren't a massively great Sunderland, like a mid-table Sunderland side, but all of their goals that season were either scored by Darren Bent or Kenwyne Jones. And he just happened to be my front two in a fantasy football league, and the goals of those two like won it for me. I won like 80 quid in a sweepstake work. So yeah, he was even doing the business after he left Charlton for me, Darren Bent. And when he played for England was just remarkable. And I remember the day a New England shirt came out, and straight away going and getting Darren's name on the back of my shirt. And then rolling it back to during the Roland years, actually, when he came back with Derby. He very kindly did an interview with me to talk about, and he gave some really good quotes about, how sad he was to see what was going on at Charlton, and the ownership need to sort this sort of stuff out as well. So, yeah, he spoke really well at the time, and so yeah, massive loads of time for Darren for what he achieved in his career, and yeah, there were some of the nice little things he's given us since he's left as well.
Big one I went on about, because him and Parker are the only two players to get in everyone's team in the 5 episodes we've done so far. And the thing I went into in the last episode was just not getting into that squad and Walcott getting in over him, and what that would have done for his career. But I mean, he has got a great career now. He seems to be doing really well as a pundit on TalkSport and that. So yeah, long may it continue. Let's have a look at your squad then. I've gone a big Mike Bassett, so let me know if you want to change anything around. But that's how it looks. What do you think of that on paper?
Yeah, no, that's sort of how I had it penned out, and yeah, I fancy that lot to beat our current team, certainly. You know, that's
the next question. So, is there anyone in our, if you have to replace one of our current team, the team playing on Saturday, who do you take out of that fantasy 11 for one of our players?
Oh, so I have to bring someone from the current team into this team?
Yeah.
Blimey, and I have to. Like, I've got no choice.
No choice. I mean, it does.
Otherwise, it would be a flat no. But you know, I'd actually do it the other way around. But well, yeah, obviously it's hard to say. You know, to be fair, like if you're taking Bent or Mendonca out for Alfie May, I mean, you've obviously we have to bear in mind levels, which is obviously a ridiculous thing. So actually, I'd actually be more likely to take Robinson out for Corey. Just on the left side, yeah. But yeah, it's slightly different role, obviously, being the left winger to what Corey does in the 4-2-3-1. But yeah, I think I'd be more likely to take Johnny out for Corey than I would be to take Bent or Mendonca out for Alfie, just because I feel like Corey could, again, Corey could do at this level what Johnny could do at his level. So it's not the same level, but Corey's got ability at this moment, whereas, you know, Bent and Mendonca could do what Alfie could do any day of the week. So,
of course. And actually, to be fair, Robinson, Jensen, Kish and Parker, Corey would add a bit of pace to that as well in terms of that's a solid midfield, but Corey does have that element of, you know, you're not sure where that last ball's going to go, but he's going to beat whoever his right back is, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, that's the only thing. If it was the other way around, like I'd love to chuck a Costa or a Rufus into our back line.
Oh God, wouldn't it be great?
Yeah, I mean, I find our defence, whilst it has improved slightly recently, the centre backs, you know, I find that's been a bit of a frustration for me in terms of concentration levels, as well as, you know, maybe even effort, or the ability to move around a lot. So yeah, that would have been the way I would have gone if the question was flipped. But yeah, that's a fine looking team there. I think that could do some damage, that one.
I think that's well balanced. I mean, I don't think Kish looks out of place there. You said you'd had to shoot him in because of how much you love him, but actually, in terms of, you know, you got two workhorses there in Robertson and Kish, but Parker can also do that. Jensen can kind of do what he wants to do, and Bent and Donker are going to get you goals, aren't they? Nothing's getting past that defence either. So, no, I think it's pretty solid there.
Yeah, that's a wonderful defence. Obviously, yeah. I was a bit cheeky sticking it in, like I say, in the old Mike Bassett 4-4-2, because you very rarely see a 4-4-2 nowadays. But you know, I'm a kid of the 90s, so that's what I grew up watching.
All right, Louis, that's been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on, mate. We've gone an hour and 45. That's pretty. I think that's the longest episode. Well done, mate. Anything you want to plug? Obviously, Charlton Live is twice a week, Thursday and Sunday. I'm a regular listener. I had my comment read out once as well. Anything else you want to? Anything you want to plug at all?
No. Well, yeah, like I say, just check out Charlton Live. Also, we're having a bit of a break over Christmas, but yeah, we'll be back twice a week. Thursday evenings 7:00, Sunday mornings 10:00 to look back at and forward to games. Obviously, yeah, my stuff's in the SLP or on the website mainly. After games, I do write up stuff, and obviously Rich has got loads of good inside knowledge on there. So yeah, check out Rich. Also, Rich has got his podcast out as well now, the South London Press Sports Podcast, which he does with Edmund. So Edmund's sort of full time at the paper, whereas I just sort of do match days. So yeah, those two stick a really good pod out where they cover all 4 of our clubs. So if you're interested in how Millwall and Palace are getting on as well, feel free to listen or do what I do and flick through to the Charlton bit. Yeah. And then don't tell Rich that though, because you don't find it funny. But yeah, look at that. And then obviously, yeah, on match days, BBC Radio London, we tend to only do updates to Charlton games. Every now and then we'll do a commentary if necessary. But yeah, BBC Radio London 94.9 FM or on DAB during midweek games, just to get your updates of what's going on with the Addicts. And that's where you get the quickest information, because obviously the radio's faster than Charlton TV. So you'll know we've scored on Radio London before on Charlton TV.
Lovely stuff, Louis. That's been fantastic. Thank you so much, mate. And I'll speak to you again soon. Thank you again.
Cheers, Sam. I loved every minute of that. It was brilliant.